buzzing, am I? Is there a buzzing going on?
It says like Stasi have tapped your line.
Here we go.
Okay, we are live. So just before we go, hello everyone. Neil Curran here, Broadsheet on the Telly. We're very happy to be back on your screens for a bit of Broadsheet on Telly after a bit of hiatus. We wish it was under better circumstances. Normally it's the ravishly attractive and very charismatic John Ryan who is hosting the show. But he is having some difficulties getting logged on. It wouldn't be Broadsheet on the Telly if we didn't have some technical difficulties along the way, but here we are, and I'm just going to have those big shoes to fill. We've got a very interesting panel tonight. Some of you who are old fans of the show will say there's nothing interesting about watching the same faces, but we have grown and matured since you've seen us last. And of course, we have quite a new face as well on the panel. So I'm Neil, I'm based in South Dublin. As you can see, I'm in isolation just like everyone else. Maybe we'll start ladies first. Vanessa, do you want to intro yourself? This is actually our third time to do intro.
I should have plenty rehearsals. Hi everyone, Vanessa here. And I'm not international at all. I'm here, I'm as local as anybody else. I'm here in Crumlin Village in Dublin 12.
Great intro. Very, very detailed. Thanks, Vanessa. Lovely face mask.
Well, I don't know where you boys have been all this time.
We'll travel down to the middle of the country and we'll say hello to our Kilkenny friend.
Neil, how are you keeping? Yeah, southeast, the sunny southeast. It's fantastic. It's kind of Californian weather, and I've just been listening to the next man you're going to talk to. Listen, it's great to be back. Let's talk about something you can hate, as my father might say. Hello to everybody.
Some things don't change, Johnny. Some things don't change. Come on. We'll travel across the ocean. Well, not too far across the ocean to sunny Portugal. We'll say hello to our man in Porto, Luke.
Hey Neil, Luke Brennan here. I was doing the Broadsheet the Telly, back in the day, 2 years ago from back in Ireland, and I then moved over to Porto, and I was giving a bit of an update on my travels there. But so still in Porto and enjoying it and enjoying the current pandemic from Porto. So hopefully get a chance to tell you a bit about that.
Lovely, thanks, Luke. And then we travel much further afield, far further than the 77 bus will take you to the west coast, the sunny west coast of the US. I'm introduced Derek all the way in Silicon Valley. Derek, you want to say hello?
Hi Neil, how are things? Great to be invited on to have a chat. Originally from the sunny southeast, as Johnny said, County Carlow. I made the way up as far as Meath, Dunboyne. Dunboyne is Malahide without the sea, by the way, just any popular developers out there. And eventually made my way all across to Silicon Valley, San Jose in California. And it has been raining here all week, but it's a bit sunny today. So
thanks, Derek. And Derek, well, certainly us in Ireland, where we have guidelines, we haven't been put on a lockdown yet, so people are leaving their house to go public. But you have more serious conditions there in California. You're in shelter in place, I believe, is the expression.
Shelter in place is the order. It's not an expression. It's actually an order from the state. So we're restricted in what we can do. We can go for a walk, go for a cycle, as long as we stay 6 feet away from anybody else outside our direct family. We can go to the store, the shop, to get groceries, or we can go to the pharmacy to get medicines, and that's about it. But California is a little bit ahead of the rest of the states, I think, in its safety precautions. They always refer to California as being the left wing of the United States. And us up here in Silicon Valley, in the Bay Area, we're the left wing of California. So they were out very early with the precautions, and people were told to work from home. This is my wife's second week now working from home, and the school closed down last Friday. So I think all the precautions were taken early, and please God, it has a desired effect.
And what's the general atmosphere there? Because certainly when I look at the news for California, what's the atmosphere like amongst people?
Well, I went to Safeway as our local Spar or local Tesco or whatever, and I was chatting. I'm friendly with one of the guys that works there, and he was telling me that he had to separate two ladies. They were fighting over toilet roll. They were trying to get the last of the toilet roll, and he had to actually go out and physically separate the two of them from fighting. And he said there was another, there was a hand sanitizer on the cash out at the checkout, and he said one lady came up with her own bottle and was taking the store's hand sanitizer out at the checkout. So I think it's that sort of people uncertain, not knowing what's going to happen, how long it's going to last, how long we're going to be here for. So there was that little bit of panic. I mean, same as home, shelves are empty. Toilet roll section is completely empty. As soon as it's refilled, it's gone again. But hopefully it's starting to calm down a little bit now over the next few days.
And what's your view on the level of testing, Derek? Because we know the US hasn't been doing, high level of testing, which is keeping the numbers down in terms of infection rates. And I guess we'll talk about Ireland soon, but given the population size and the density of population, particularly in California, what's your view of the world with that?
Well, lucky enough, I don't know anybody who has showed any symptoms or not, so I'm not aware of anybody who hasn't been able to get a test. But just from watching the news, it seems to be that if you have a high profile, you happen to be wealthy or a famous basketball player, there's no problem getting the test. But it seems that there's a big shortage of testing all across the States. And I reckon the numbers here are a lot higher than what we're seeing. It's just that people haven't been tested.
And I think that's something that we're probably seeing in a lot of countries. Thanks, Derek. Luke, we'll jump across to Portugal. What's the setup there? Like, how are things in Porto?
I think it's much the same as Ireland, to be honest. There isn't a complete lockdown, but they've sort of restricted. Actually, the bars are open and the restaurants are open, but they're the social distancing regulations are in place. They have declared a state of emergency. I mean, I was out and about today, and I did walk by a bar and hear people having a bit of a laugh in there. So I think it's maybe a little bit more lax than they're maybe not taking it as seriously as they should be. But I suppose people will wait until forced to take it seriously. But that's just how it is.
Yeah, and I guess for anyone joining us now, I'm joined by this Luke Brennan, who's been speaking, joined by Vanessa Foran, Derek O'Donoghue in California, and Johnny Keenan in Kilkenny. We are, of course, talking about COVID-19 coronavirus. So jumping, Johnny, Vanessa, maybe go to yourself in Crumlin, the heart of Dublin City, some might say.
It is.
You're a celebrity accountant, as we all know. What are you hearing on the feed? How's it affecting your side of the world?
I suppose in one way we're all still working and ticking along. In my line of business, I guess courts are shut down pretty much now, but there's nothing stopping you from working away, But we do know we're kind of going into this big freeze effectively for the next 2, maybe 3 months, and then there's all the rumor about the moratoriums with the banks, and people are looking to see, does that help them? And then you have clients then that are automatically now just off work for 6 to 8 weeks. And so there's a lot of uncertainty, but I think in fairness, I don't hear anyone complaining or being miserable about it. I just think people they're cooperating with everything. They are everywhere you go, whether it's a coffee shop or in the bank or over in the credit union here. Everyone is observing the distance. Everyone is cleaning their hands. Everyone is cooperating, and I think they would do that anyway. I haven't heard anyone being really nasty about it or obnoxious or, complaining about it. I think everyone is realizing that this is on us and it's up to us, all of us together, to deal with it. I really haven't heard anyone react negatively to the whole thing. I suppose in one way, you know, we're hearing now about people testing positively, and I suppose John had a thread up today about it. It's missing the peasants and stuff. There's an element to that, but people they don't want to hear about Vanessa Foran getting testing positive. They want to hear about princes and Tom Hanks. I mean, how is Tom Hanks, by the way? You know, he's not going to be asking how is Vanessa, or how is Neil, or how is Johnny, or how is
out of
Derek.
hospital. He's out of hospital himself and his wife.
Yeah. You know, like one of us is going to carry the virus. This is the way it's going, you know, and, you know, we don't know what's ahead, but I really do think everyone has bought into knowing it's up to us to stop it. It's not up to Leo's speeches or up to opening up Crow Park and the testing centres and all these things that are coming on stream now. I think everyone knows it's up to us.
Yeah, it's funny, like it's something that, like, even in his speech, you know, when he's talking about the doctors, nurses, I mean, they're kind of like, you know, it's as if like the people are actually the front line, you know, and then, you know, like the doctors and nurses, they're the sort of last line of defense. So it's up to people, citizens, and their behavior to really sort of, you know, do, like, they're the ones that can actually make a difference.
It's remarkable to think that if you'd have said to somebody 2 months ago that the Premier League would be cancelled and that the NBA basketball would be cancelled, people would have like thought that was nuts. And I think it shows maybe one way how compliant we can be and that we accept things, but I think more importantly, how much like people look out for each other. And I don't think any of our age are too concerned about getting it ourselves, but I think we're all really concerned about passing it on to somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people have responded so well.
Do you mind there, Derek? I think also when the foot and mouth broke here, there was a complete shutdown, and we did keep it out of the country completely, other than that guy at the cross border doing a bit of cross border rustling. That was the only case in the Republic, and that's because there was an immediate zero tolerance clampdown. Like cars were sprayed, there was mats everywhere, all over, you know, and like that's and it worked. And people rode together then because there was a lot of people then that remembered the last foot and mouth outbreak. And do you know, like it is in our hands. And I think Luke made a very good point, and I'm going to hack it. Really, we are the front line. We are the front line. And you could see by the number of volunteers that the HSE got in the last few days.
I think it speaks to the sense of community, you know, that people are really part of it, to feel belong to a community, you know, and they're looking out for each other.
Yeah. And you're actually, I mean, like societies that are a bit more fragmented, for example, like the UK, you know, I would say that the sense of, you know, I've lived in a number of places in the UK and over the years, and there isn't the same sense of community that there is in Ireland. And you know, while there's lots of very good people there, you know, I think in a situation like this, when you don't have those sort of small relationships with lots of people, you maybe don't, you know, go out to check how someone is, and, you know, that sort of thing. And I think
I don't know if you've seen any of the spring break videos, people in Miami. Spring break is a big thing for college students in the US.
Yeah.
And just go on to Twitter or YouTube and look at spring break in Miami. The beaches are packed. People are doing what college students do, drinking and hooking up with each other and what have you. And I think that speaks to your point as well, that there isn't that connection.
Yeah, no, it's a bit scary, really. Because I think, you know, just even looking at I sort of have a little bit of a window into this in terms of I've been keeping probably an eye on this earlier than most people, in that my fiance is.
We have news. We have a wedding.
There you go now.
For a wedding.
She's from South Korea, so you know, they obviously a month ago went into lockdown and very successfly managed to sort of like stop the you know, the virus spreading too much. But you know, I've been watching that and thinking, okay, in Korea they've done a good job, and in China, they've done a good job, but they really only have to deal with their own outbreak there. Whereas once it goes to Europe, you've got everyone in, so for example, in Portugal, when you look at all the different entry points of the disease, there's, you know, one or two local contaminations, and then there's, you know, one's from Spain, one's from Italy, one's from Germany, one, you know, like all the people traveling around. And it's actually, you know, the sort of the affluent travelers are acting as this sort of transport network for the virus now, that is actually brought into a thing where, you know, even if you can contain your own outbreak, you can't actually manage you know, where else is going to come from. And I think in the sort of Western world, the sort of the richer countries, including Ireland and Portugal, like we can kind of handle that a bit. But when it gets into the Mexicos and the Pakistans and the Russias, you know, it's going to be, you know, a very horrible situation, you know, because there's no way they're going to be able to roll anything out that will be able to catch up with the spread of the virus. It's, you know, it's just, and it's kind of, it's a bit sad because the, you know, the richer countries will be so involved with themselves and fighting their own problems that there will be no aid. Even the, you know, the Peace Corps there, like, call back everyone to the US. You know, all the sort of aid workers will be pulling out and going home, and you're going to be in this sort of worldwide situation, like a true worldwide pandemic, and no money to do it. You know, no aid available.
Yeah, but Luke, do you not think that some of the lessons learned in the other countries that have moved it on, or, you know, closed it down, like say China or
yeah, yeah, I think
that will help, like the countries where
yeah.
it'll explode now, as particularly in the southern hemisphere as we go into their summer.
Yeah, I think that the lessons learned do help, but I don't think, I mean, even in terms of like the thing about there's no proof that it goes quiet in the summer. Even if you take, for example, the spread in Portugal relative to Ireland. I mean, Ireland, you know, in Portugal now it's about 20 degrees. It's kind of like June in Ireland. And it spread the same rate here as it does there, you know, so I don't know. I wouldn't hold any hope on that. I think the problems of, like I said, new contamination sources is always a bigger problem than any of the benefits of the lessons they're learning. I mean, really, you have to be looking to maybe sort of, you know, vaccines or treatments. I mean, they're the sort of, to me, they're the only sort of solutions, because other than that, it's happening. It's worldwide.
I think you're right, Luke. I think it has to, like, we won't be out of this until we have a vaccine. I think it will still come in waves. It will, like, we might be able to contain it, stop it from getting to our areas if everybody continues to follow all the guidelines and hand washing and social distancing and social isolation, all that. We contain it. But as soon as we try to go back to normal, or if we don't help out the rest of the world, if it's not dealt with as a whole world scenario, well, then it's going to keep coming back. So we could see it in waves, that it might ease off in the summer, then come autumn, winter, it'll peak again, maybe drop off again then next spring. But until we get a vaccine, I think we're going to be in for, you know, this is not going to go away overnight.
Well, there was that very scary graphic, wasn't there, about the Spanish flu, that, you know, the sort of that killed many millions, was 100 million, that there was like 20 million killed the first year, 70 million the next year, and then 10 million the last year. That's the breakdown. So, you know, the first year.
But Luke, that was a very different environment then, and also a lot of the Spanish flu epidemic was largely because they didn't inform people better. You know, say we're all pretty well informed now, and we're getting updates, we're getting numbers, and we're getting stats, and we're getting, you know, by the minute. It's in our hand. Look, we're getting updates here, and so I think it's an unfair comparison. I think because the information wasn't there, and it was World War I, and, you know, maybe governments didn't want people to know what was going on because they still wanted production going on, and they still needed food, and I don't know, I'm not a historian, but I think these events are going to be more and more commonplace, and I do think how we live our lives is going to be very different. I do think we are going to be very careful now in who we're hugging and kissing and mauling, and I think we're always going to have hand sanitizer in our pockets, and I do think how we go about our lives is going to be very different. And I feel very different now. And I was watching telly at the weekend, and I was watching people kissing and hugging, and I felt like we were in the middle of this dystopian planet like this.
Yeah.
We don't do that at all.
Yeah, no, I had the same thing.
Doing?
I watch see people on TV and just carefree hugging each other. Like, what?
Yeah, I know. And I was watching Ocean's 11 the other night, and the lads are patting each other on the back and all this. And I'm going, Jesus, we don't do that at all. Like, this is totally weird, you know. And I do think the way we live our life is going to be very different. And if it's not this virus, there'll be another one and another one. There'll be another strain of the flu, and it's just the way we live our lives now.
I think our kids will laugh. I think our kids will laugh at the idea. I think our kids will laugh at the idea that we used to like have a handshake to greet each other. I think that would become so passé. Even now.
What about the Paddy's one, Derek? What about the Paddy's one?
Yeah.
Imagine.
I heard someone say that the handshake actually came from, like, originally it was to show that you weren't holding a gun, you know. That was, you know, it was a greeting but the reason behind it was that, you know, if you showed your open hand, you obviously didn't have a gun. So
we're all taught, like, to give a good solid handshake. You know, that was a sign of being trustworthy, and, you know.
Yeah.
That's good solid.
Well,
handshake.
I always show people's hands. It would be natural for me to take someone's hand.
Yeah.
Jesus, nice to know what I'm going to have to do.
It's Johnny. You're quiet there in Kilkenny, probably in a privileged position, because I know outside of Dublin, Johnny, the infection rate are obviously lower. But I'm interested to hear, Johnny, your view on obviously all the international leaders have been giving speeches, some rated well, some bad, and our man Leo gave an extraordinary speech the other night. I'm interested to hear your views on it.
Yeah, well, just after listening to letting Armageddon sink in there, thanks, Luke. I sleep tight tonight. No, you're right, Vanessa and Derek. Yeah, it's horrifying. It's harrowing. You know, you can't really say much more than that. In relation to our leader, I refuse to call him Taoiseach because that kind of gives him a sense of history, and he's not even the third most popular leader in the country at the moment. But aside from that, someone in his PR team that we kind of really went through there on the sheet or on the telly when we were in our prime, if you remember, we were there from the start of his election. Well, he's a Fine Gael election to get the leadership, and we didn't really give him much of a chance from the start. And he's just he read something there that was very insincere that someone from his PR team that we're paying for wrote, and it was the Winston Churchill thing was just how fucking cliched and how ridiculous. Can the man not come up with anything powerful? It wasn't a leader speech, but that's all I can say in it. Was I waiting on edge? People were tweeting me. I hadn't heard from them in years, texting me. Leo's on at 9. Okay, is it going to be like Charlie Hottie, tighten our belt kind of speech, or is he going to close the airports? What's he going to say? Nothing really, and very disappointing. But I'm not really listening to him or any of the government for that matter in relation to, there's a guy there, Ryan, from the WHO. He seems to be on the money. And we're all in the one boat, lads. That's the whole thing. Derek in California, Luke in Porto, and you were in Dublin, and Vanessa in Dublin, I'm in Kilkenny. Everyone is in the same boat, lads. And it's really interesting times. As Vanessa said, we're finished where we were, and where we're going is unknown. But we'll have to get there because we're all on the same buzz. That's all I'm saying. I think so.
Danny, one thing I didn't see Leo's speech live, but I saw on Twitter that it got a good reaction, and people felt that he was like he'd hit the right tone. The only thing I'll say to you is that after listening to Donald Trump for the last 3 years, it was great to hear a leader who sounded like he had a brain, you know, because Trump is unreal. I mean, 3 weeks ago he was still calling this a hoax, democratic hoax. You know, it's trying to damage the economy so he won't get re-elected. The last 2 days, he has made, he's been more serious in his comment. But I mean, when I heard Leo's speech after what I've been listening to, I was proud of the leader we had.
But the bar isn't that high. When you compare him to Trump, in fairness.
That's a fair point.
I don't think I'm alone in that. And I didn't see the Armagh when he went to, and brought O'Neill and Foster together. And I think he did good there. He's done some good stuff. But in relation to, I want to hear my medics and I want to hear the top brass. I don't want to see Leo and Simon going around photo opportunities, photo bombing, and just reading press releases that they have nothing. I don't know what their purpose is. I need to hear professionals on a daily basis, as opposed to them. So that's just the way I see it.
I think when you look at, say, the other leaders internationally, and look at, I'm not sure if the Portuguese government has given such a speech, but certainly, generally speaking, no disrespect to any, generally speaking, the Leo speech does seem to have been very well received, certainly on social media and anecdotally. Angela Merkel's speech the other night was also very well received. Luke, how about in Portugal? What's the state reaction been like, and has there been any similar response?
Well, I mean, my Portuguese is basic, so I sort of my interactions are obviously from talking to Portuguese people, which is quite limited now. I mean, generally, day to day, I'm sort of talking to myself or my girlfriend. It's the two of us here, and we're not going out an awful lot because so I'm talking mostly to people back in Ireland or work stuff, which is mostly Ireland as well. But the one sort of bit of a window I have is the there's an English version of a Portuguese paper which I read, and I'll sort of see, I'll sort of go through the sort of the news that way. So but the general the general sort of feeling is the same, that people are sort of a little bit anxious, looking for someone to sort of show a bit of leadership. They're wondering what's coming down the line, but sort of beyond that, I sort of I've read that the speeches have been reasonably well received. There's a sort of a prime minister here that's sort of like the head of a sort of leftist government that people are reasonably happy with. The president, everyone loves. He's I can't remember his name, but he's a very popular guy. He's a bit older, and he went into sort of self-isolation after being visited by a lot of kids that and in their school there had been an outbreak. So I suppose there's even at that level they're sort of getting a bit scared. But there's no major news there in terms of there's no outbreaks in the in the Parliament or anything like that, which it seems to be now over the UK and in the US as well now. It seems, and Brazil. Brazil, of course, is very closely linked to Portugal. It's a former colony. At one point, they were trying to make sort of Brazil the sort of the seat of Portugal. But I know a lot of Brazilians here, and they'd spent the last number of years being very upset about the right-wing government there, and the Bolsonaro, the guy who's in charge there. He's one of Trump's mini-me's, and he's trying to sort of maintain his power by any means possible. And people are just generally disappointed. But he did things like his assistant was tested positive for coronavirus, and he was told to go into self-isolation. He didn't. 3 days later, he was out greeting his fans in the street as they went on some protest against the people who were against him. So there's all this sort of stuff. And I really worry for, like I said, I'm not trying to be too down about the whole thing. I just, I do think it is a weighty thing, sort of in these countries where I have some friends at the moment over in Brazil who are Portuguese, and they're saying, "Oh, we're so glad that no one's panicking here like they are back in Portugal," and I think it's just that the government haven't yet told them the seriousness of it, and when it hits there, and you don't have, if you look at the death rates, you know, the mortality rates in Italy compared to somewhere like Germany or South Korea, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, like I would say that the Germany and South Korea have much better equipped hospitals, and you're probably talking about sort of 10 times the death rate there. If you look at somewhere like Brazil, you're probably talking about the same sort of jump down. So you're talking about somewhere that really isn't equipped to deal with something like this. And I think those sort of countries, like they're really going to suffer. There was a case in Mexico there where someone sort of tested positive for coronavirus. She was his wife was in the hospital. She was saying, okay, well, if he's tested positive, how am I able to go in to see him, and why is no one in here wearing a mask? You know, so obviously the hospital staff are passing it around or whatever, and that's the sort of level of, you know, look at a place like Venezuela where you've got, like, you know, sort of, you know, no health system left. You know, it's gonna ravage these places. You know, it's pretty scary.
And when we look at actually from today, the volume of infected cases that was announced this evening, I think we'd somewhere, I might be mistaken, but I think it was 100 and I had the figures there, 191, and of course we tragically have had a third death, and it was a jump of over twice what we had yesterday, which again, anecdotally, it could potentially be down to the increase in testing that we've seen here in Ireland since they've opened up Croke Park on Tuesday. And I believe the tests take 3 days to come back. So perhaps anecdotally, that's evidence that, you know, this is far more widespread than we're seeing. And when you look, people are probably well familiar with the worldometer.info website, which compiles all the coronavirus data and the cases around the world. You can see how severe it is, and if you look at other countries where the testing isn't that high, yet their number of cases they have is quite large already, then it makes for some very dire statistics.
Just to try and sort of lighten what I said there, like the reason I'm sort of talking so much about that is I really think that something can be done. You know, I think we can sort of pull it back. If you take the example of South Korea, I think they have successfully, you know, sort of turned the tide against it. But it's exactly like you said, it was like a lot of testing, testing everyone. And I mean, they've an excellent health system there, but they not only do they test everyone, but so if you're in South Korea, you're getting text messages 20 times a day saying patient number 432, you know, sort of went, you know, got off at Lansdowne Road Dart Station. He then traveled over to have lunch in, you know, XYZ in Balls Bridge. He then, got in his car and went out to Slorgan. He sat in this hotel for 2 hours. You know, you're getting a full run of everything that happened with every case. So people can come forward and say, oh, actually, I'm probably, you know, I was exposed there and like I said. But when you don't have that information, and I think, not so much in Ireland, I think they are literally trying, but I really do think that the UK are not trying hard enough. I think this thing of herd immunity, this concept of, well, if we just sort of let people develop immunity through the community having immunity, well, that will sort of be a way to resolve it. And I think that's a very cynical thing to do. I think you're talking about, even in the UK, you're talking about sort of, you know, double to triple the deaths, just because it's politically convenient, because that would get the economy going faster. You know, that's what the ticket that people like Trump and Johnson and all them are going on.
Yeah, but you think Boris Johnson is very much the details. He's not interested in details. He's all big picture. You know, everything with them is just that's all details.
Yeah.
Coming up with a plan is just details, and reading off a script. He doesn't do scripts, you know, like the way Leo would read off a script all the time. Yeah, I think England is going to explode, and if they explode, so are we. But Neil said, I think the testing, once we catch up with testing, we're going to have huge numbers here. But you know, at the same time, I think shutting down for the 4 or 5 weeks will push it back. I really do. I hope so.
Can I ask about Northern Ireland? What are the numbers coming out in Northern Ireland like? I know they haven't closed the schools, for example. I just
was that dead today? Sorry, beg your pardon, Derek.
No problem.
That Northern Ireland today, where was it?
Not sure where it was, but it's the
Yeah.
first death was reported today. I think there's 77 people in total in Northern Ireland that have tested positive. I believe the schools are going to close on Friday. I'm open to correction on that, but I think the schools are going to close on Friday.
I think that's
I'm
right.
just wondering what the impact of the Republic closing the schools versus the impact of not closing the schools in the north is. You'd imagine that the Republic should see a big benefit from having closed the schools. I just wondering, is there anything coming out about that?
One of the problems there, sorry, Vanessa, one of the problems there is that you don't really know because, you know, if testing is different, you know, if they're not testing as much in the north as part of the UK regime, then you don't see the numbers.
Yeah.
I think the closing the schools, I think parents were already wary and people were already wary the week before that. Sort of when it started coming back, when they started realizing that it was people returning from Italy, from skiing in Italy, I think.
Yeah.
People started to get very wary. And I think at that point, people started to take precautions. Maybe not the shaking of the hands and sterilizing and social distancing, but I think people were starting to get wary. And in the UK, there's a huge number of parents not sending their children to school anyway. They're sort of 2 or 3 steps ahead, and I think we probably were as well. I think the going to Cheltenham was probably the thing here that people realised, geez, lads, we're only fooling ourselves here. So everyone's bought into it. I can honestly tell you, in Dublin for the over 3 weeks, there hasn't been a car on the road. You've been able to get into town in 2 or 3 minutes. And that was before things shut down. Do you know what I mean? Arnott's only shut down yesterday. So, like, there hasn't been a car on the road in weeks, like, as in traffic. There's been no commuter traffic at all.
Yeah.
So I think people have been buying into it from a long ways off, you know.
You said about Cheltenham there, Vanessa, and the rugby as well. 3,000 to 5,000 Italians were roaming around Dublin, but I don't think that was well, you know, we'll see. But Cheltenham, like, only fools and horses, you know, that was come on through, lads, and it was almost like us against them mentality, and that could have went very badly, but it didn't. It just, like, you know, cop the fuck on, and we're really, really good at it. But what I want to know, Luke, there in relation to Eugene, congratulations on the prenuptials. Is that right? Is that the right term?
Tell us all about it. Listen, we're done now. We're done now.
No, South Korea. No, I just want to know about South Korea in relation, because they are ahead. And the numbers are going down. So what's the population, first of all, and what would she say that we should be doing, like?
Well, population is about 50 million. It's a bit, you know, the size of the UK. But I mean, you know, I think it's like the national character is important, you know, and I think you know, although the South Koreans, the South Koreans are called the Latinos of Asia, you know, they're a bit of crack and they like their drinking, but they're also very serious about, you know, work and getting things done and following a proper order. They're very diligent and you know.
Are they proud of Parasite? I thought it was a great film.
They're very proud of Parasite.
Very good
I thought it was a
film.
brilliant film.
I don't know why it is. Maybe, you know, sort of heartache causes like good films to be made, because Irish people make very good films, and also the Koreans, you know, people who have a history of difficult times. You know, they had a lot of difficult times with both China and Japan, doing various things to them. But you know, the standard of filmmaking is amazing. I mean, not just Parasite, but if you have a look at Korean films, you find a dozen. I haven't seen a bad Korean film.
Old Man, that's probably one of the best films ever.
Amazing.
Like, it really is.
Old Boy, I think you mean.
So is that where the wedding is?
Old Boy,
Where you're flying us out for the wedding, Luke?
Yeah, well, you know, if you can get a flight, you know.
And a face mask.
But you're not bringing us as part of your party. Family.
Of course, yeah. You're practically family. But
I'm expecting the full hat.
Yeah. Yeah. Private jet.
Top table.
Private jet just for you, Vanessa.
Vanessa, sorry, go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, no, but like I said, so
character.
National character, and so like the Koreans are like, holy shit, this is happening. Everyone has to work together, do everything. Now, one thing I'd also say is like the standard, the healthcare system is like a million miles better than anything I've ever experienced in Europe. I was over there during the year, and you know, the sort of thing where like I was walking around a lot, and I got this thing on my foot. There's a little sinew that has a little bone hanging in the middle of it, under the arch of your foot. That if you sort of if you damage it, it's very sore when you walk. I didn't know what was going on, but we literally went, oh well, like my girlfriend went, oh well, where is there somewhere like with you know, medical center here, and there's one like 200 meters away. We walked in. The secretary like asked the information. She said, could you sit here for 2 minutes? We sat down for 2 minutes. They filled out the form. They said, okay, could you please come in here for an x-ray? And they x-rayed my foot. And they said, okay, could you please come in here to see the consultant? And the consultant had a look over, looked at the x-ray, he gave me a prescription. I went outside, and literally in 10 minutes, I had the sort of 2-week Irish experience of going to the hospital consultant, you know. And this is just on a sort of street side clinic. And the standard of care was just amazing, you know. So I think they're very blessed in that way. And like I said, that's part of how they are and how they operate. What you call it? So I think, but at the same time, I think, you know, Irish people sort of raise their game, you know, for, you know, they're good at in a crisis. I'd rather, you know, sort of have Irish people behind me in a crisis than almost anyone, you know. And I think there's a lot of sort of smart people in the health system in Ireland. I've had a couple of good experiences, but I think you know, the health system being on the ball, but then after that, like the testing is the important thing, you know, like everyone being tested, everyone, like the signs up in like, you know, like the signs up in the street in Korea at the moment saying like, don't have sex, right? Because you could be spreading the virus. That's like how seriously they take it.
How does that, what does that sound like in Korean? Don't have sex, Luke.
Yeah. So, like my Korean is even worse than my Portuguese, so I wouldn't go there. I can say "annyeonghaseyo." That's hello in Korean. That's you know, that got me through with the parents, and after that, you know, I'm guessing I've about 10 words. But no, but I'd say that the testing thing is key, because like once you can test, then you can. There was an interesting thing in the paper there where in Italy they got a village of 4,000 people, and they tested everyone. They found 5 people had a virus. They kept everyone quarantined. They tested again 2 days later. They found another 5 people hadn't showed symptoms and actually had it as well. They removed those 5 people as well, and then the village was clear. You know, and that's, I think, a good sort of analogy of what people have to do. They have to sort of test a lot, isolate, and then like track things, you know. And I suppose that's part of probably what the Irish government are doing in trying to recruit so many people. Is it'd be very sort of people heavy and probably tech heavy to try and manage the tracing of where everyone who's been in and who they talk to and who they you know.
So 50 million population in Korea, South Korea.
Yeah.
How many did they employ to do that tracking? Because it seemed to be very intensive there, that this guy was able to go from A to B to C and be monitored. That's great information. So 24,000 that the HSE looked for. I have a full driver's license. I was a care worker for 3 years, but I don't know how beneficial that is. But I think tracking, like, I definitely would like to get involved in that.
Yeah.
Because that sounds very progressive. Yeah. And it seems to be bringing results as well, Luke.
Well, absolutely.
Would it be the main reason why it's down, like, or what is?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, well, you know, you've got the mix of, like I said, the good attitude, the sort of diligence, but also they're a very technically advanced sort of society. You know, when you go there, another part of it is, you know, like everything's very clean there. You know, they sort of, you know, it's the first thing that I noticed when I went in. I came out of the airport in Seoul, and I went in to get a coffee, and you're handed, like, you know, a pristine cup of coffee with a little hand wipe and a tissue, and you go to like a pristine table, and you know there's not a crumb on it. You know, everything is, you know, that's just the sort of expectation. So if you sort of, like, it's funny now because now you have that here in Europe, right, where with people are worried about the virus, so people are behaving like that. But that was their behavior anyway, so I suppose that helped them. But after that, it's I think you know, like high technology. They turned around in 2 weeks. They developed a test from when the Chinese company said this is the DNA of the virus. 2 weeks later, they were making a test that could sort of diagnose it. So, you know, they have this huge microbiological sort of industry there that is very rapid. Then in terms of technology, obviously you've heard of like Samsung and LG and companies like that. Like they're like world leaders, and they will be pulled in and they will be forced to sort of do it. I mean, you know, at the same time, Ireland is in a good position in those regards as well. It's got a huge medical device and like pharmaceutical industry, lots of good people there. I think half the ventilators in the world are made in Ireland. So we won't be running out of ventilators anyway. You know, and then from a tech perspective, I think Ireland, you know, is very strong there too. So I mean, I think Ireland has all the ingredients to show what can be done, and it being an island helps as well, right?
Yeah, but
Thanks,
Luke,
Luke.
there was always like a social cohesion in South Korea, because if anyone remembers the Japan-South Korea World Cup, what was it? The Saipan affair. And do you remember the crowds in the street? Because South Korea had gone on further than they thought.
Yeah.
I mean, there was hundreds of thousands on the street, and they were all kind of chanting the same. And then you see them all picking up the rubbish on the way home. So there was always this kind of Gangnam style, you know.
Yeah. They're like that, yeah. Yeah. And
I can see that, but
there's bad things to that as well.
I think we're that. Yeah, I think we're a bit like that too. I think the Irish are clannish as well.
I think so. I see huge similarities.
You know, and I'm very taken. Yeah, I'm very taken with your expression that we are the front line. Yes, we are. We're the front line, Leo.
Yeah. Well, in that same way that, like, I mean, I was saying, like, you know, I wouldn't mess with the Koreans and I wouldn't mess with the Irish either. You know, like, sort of like, because there is a sort of like a good ability for people to back each other up. You know, and I think that's really what we have to do now. You know.
I think the hardest part for the paddies and all this will be the fact that there won't be any wakes or sing songs at the funerals, or you know, the full run at it, as they'd say, you know, at a funeral. I think that'll be the part they'll miss the most here. But hopefully there won't be as many funerals to miss out on.
Yeah,
it's containment, really.
Yeah, good of luck.
And Ashley, no.
Luke, just
can we talk about the movies now? Or Luke's wedding?
Luke, when you talk about you know, the Korean healthcare system, I think we're all aware of the challenges the Irish healthcare system faces. What does the panel think about the future of that when all going well, that this is a thing of the past, and we're re-looking at how our health, like, it's clearly the health service is going to come under even more increased pressure as the days go on, never mind weeks. What do the panel think is the longer lasting implications of that to our health service, to funding and management?
It'll go back to the way it was, Neil. Suddenly, when this goes back, it'll be back to housing. It'll be back to, you know, arrears crisis again. That's what I think, anyway.
I'm not sure. I think the world is changing fast anyway. I think technology, algorithms, data, all this stuff. Like, I think people have an experience now of being forced to work from home, and it's going to open up opportunities for people to work from home who never thought they could work from home before. In terms of education, there was always a reluctance to move from a school building to online education. People like the school building, but if this continues, if this crisis, if the schools don't open up again to the summer, and we go back to next September, the schools still aren't open, people's attitudes to what online education is will change, I think. And if that does happen, and like say the thing for people working from home, if that happens, that opens up possibilities for housing, because you no longer then need to be in the city centre, or you need to be in the town. If people are able to work from home, they can work from anywhere. And that might open up more possibilities for housing that could solve those issues. So if you want to sort of look at it as a slightly positive thing, I think all the benefits of technology in terms of like working from home, online education, all that sort of stuff, that could help us in the slightly medium, longer term to sort out the issues of the housing, the waiting lists, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but Derek, that'll take the pressure off the rural broadband rollout now. But what you're saying,
Put the pressure on it. No,
it'll take the pressure off, take the spotlight off the contract and how it was done, and the fact it went from 500 million to 3 billion overnight.
Did ever anyone think that by the time the 3 billion broadband is rolled out, everyone will be in rural Ireland saying, lads, we have it already, you're grand. You know?
Yeah.
Because everyone, I know it's
well, your broadband has really improved, Johnny.
Thanks. No, the technology, I've got a few apparatuses. And obviously the new setting makes me look good. But listen, it goes back to contain. How are we going to contain it? And if people aren't sensible, like they're beginning to be, 270 odd ICU beds, and it could peak at 60,000. Like that's going on projections from Italy, and but Johnson's craziness is still like, no more crazy than nothing really. I think it actually is, but he rationalized saying like people are going to get it eventually, but he's guesstimate 700,000 will die. Is that right? You know,
in the UK.
Yeah, but he's fairly straight up about it. Like, people will die, and this is what's going to happen. But bring that into Northern Ireland, then people in Northern Ireland should be saying, listen, we can't wonder what they're going to do on the mainland. We're actually affected by this, and we should be able to sort it out amongst ourselves, you know?
Well, I wouldn't like them to hear them say the mainland, Johnny.
Well, yeah, it's just a figure of speech, Vanessa, you know. But I definitely think that this is where it's going to be anyway, that the nationalists and the unionists will have to agree, are we going to save each other's lives, lads, because either that or close up the border. But that's looking ahead. Straight away, we need to contain it, because a failing health service already, which is on its knees, can't deal with anything in relation to a few thousand. Do you know what I mean? Like, so if we can contain that, and everyone's checked these guns, right? 70 euros, I think they are. That'll do a village in an afternoon, small town. Is that all right with what the Chinese were using as well? They get your temperature, but you also pass in relation to you're not infected. Move on. Next. And drive-throughs as well. Crow Park is obviously a big one there for Dublin. And yeah, just exactly follow what Korea and Portugal.
Yeah, but I think our health services will cope. I think they will. Okay, there's the trolleys and there's the ICU shortages. I think when this travels out, when this goes its full circle, and the all clear is given in 6 to 8 weeks, I think you'll find the health services did do very well. I think the advice we got all the way along was right. Sam McConkey three weeks ago was saying our lifestyles are going to change dramatically. This is a life-changing event. And he's right, but in days it was the fact. I think our health services will actually come out as heroes here. Because we do have the skills, we do have the expertise. You do not necessarily have the infrastructure, but in a country of less than 4 million people, you're not really going to get the infrastructure you're going to get in South Korea.
Yeah, but that's also because we're 4.5 million, Vanessa, which is a lovely small population. So everyone should be tracked, and with the technology, and with what we have in relation to resources, good Irish spirit, we should be able to. This should be like a small little parish coming together for the greater good. That mentality, that's what drives it on.
Yeah, but I'm a great believer in the common bond philosophy. Like, I'm a credit union activist and a cooperative activist, and I believe in the cooperative way. But you could Neil early had a took to the barricades himself over having to get a PSE card, for God's sake. Now you're talking about tracking people. Lads aren't going to like that. You can't even track sheep in Wicklow. Fellas will be getting all upset.
Well, there was a lot.
Sorry, Derek.
Yeah, so you mentioned there getting over 6 to 8 weeks. Do you think 6 to 8 weeks will have us back to some sort of normality? Because even
Boris Johnson is saying 12 weeks.
It's going to be July and August.
Yeah,
something.
I think by July, I think by July, I think there'll be 2 or 3 months where it'll be semi back to normal. But having said that, I don't think individually any of us will ever be back to normal. I think we're all going to live our lives very differently. Okay, we're not going. I think from now on, people will start wearing. Like Luke's been to South Korea, but if you're in Japan, Japanese, and even if they had a runny nose, they always travelled with masks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was always about not passing it on to the next person on the train or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's a lifestyle we'll be adopting. There'll be no more of this now with lads, I think we'll be a lot more careful. I think we'll all be doing the hands now to the turn of Kevin Barry, and we'll all be doing this, And I think that's how we're going to be washing my hand. There'll be no more fellas giving us a shake and going back out onto the dance floor. Like I think the hugging and the
Where have
kissing.
you been dancing?
The what?
Where have you been dancing?
It's been a long time since I've been out dancing, Johnny. Actually, the last time I was out dancing was with you.
What? Where was that, Longford?
Do you remember at my 50th down in Waterford?
Oh, yeah. That's a while ago. No, we were met since then.
Funny.
I haven't been out since then, no.
Really? Oh, yeah, well, that's life ends at 50. Who would have thunk, huh? You're grand, Vanessa. You'll be all right.
It's funny you say about the shaking the hands, Vanessa. Before the lockdown happened, I was at Hamilton up in San Francisco, and the queue for the men's bathroom was longer than the queue for the women's bathroom. And when you walked into the bathroom, the restroom, it was like a bubble bath. It was that much suds and people washing their hands, scrubbing their hands, but there was suds everywhere. And I certainly never experienced that in a male bathroom before.
There'll be no more Tipperary showers anyway, that's for sure.
Well, the one good thing about this, Vanessa, and you'll back me up on this, that Tipperary hurling is probably finished. They're caught in Spain. They're never to return.
Are they stuck out there?
Stuck out there. They went on the Monday as well, lads.
Oh, we're able to shout that, are we?
Yeah, I know.
Hey, Derek, I didn't get the earlier part of the conversation. What brought you out to San Francisco anyway?
My wife works with a software company, and they offered her a job out here, Shortville in Ireland, for 16 years, and Cadence Design Systems. So 3 years ago, we decided to come out here and see what it was like. I'm a teacher. That's what I do. So it's been great. Love it. Lovely people. People from all over the world. Everyone's very friendly. The weather is fantastic. It's very expensive. That's the biggest downside. But all in all, it's been good.
Okay, I'm just curious. That's all. What's the
Vanessa,
other
I
gossip?
think, Vanessa, to put you on the spot, right? We get practical for a minute because we can't have people listening to this show and walking away with nothing. Given you are the celebrity accountant in that, and we're reading about the level of unemployment, be it temporary or otherwise, and emergency welfare for people. Is there any tips or advice you'd give to people who are anxious about having to pay mortgages, pay rent, applying for welfare? Any tips or advice that you'd give people who are kind of feel like they're looking into a black hole?
Well, I'm not an ombudsman, but
But you're a celebrity accountant, and being a celebrity accountant,
I would say don't panic. Don't if you are at risk of going into arrears and you feel you are at risk of going into arrears, contact your lender, no matter whether it's your mortgage lender or your car loan, or get in ahead of it and put them on notice of possible pre-arrears. And once you start to engage, then they'll engage with you. So don't pretend, if you are at risk, don't pretend it's not going to happen. Engage with your creditor. But I would say don't panic yet, folks.
and I know we've heard talk of a moratorium with mortgages, and there isn't a moratorium with rent from what I'm reading. I understand that our housing minister is patting himself on the back for a rent increase freeze, which is not the same. Any thoughts on that, Vanessa?
Well, could I
I don't think there's going to be a mortgage moratorium. I think there might be an interest moratorium, or maybe an interest only, but I can't see them not collecting mortgages. I mean, it'd be grossly unfair to suspend people's repayments on their family home and then insist that that the landlords are allowed to collect rent.
So
the landlord then is possibly availing of the moratorium.
But that was my question. So I guess
that's
we don't.
Double that you're into an area there where there's profiteering.
So there's no, you're not aware of anything yet, any detail or any substance into what this might look like.
The decisions are being made on the fly. I mean, the central bank are sending out questionnaires to people, like say the credit unions now. They're constantly getting questionnaires, and what they're doing is they're looking to see what we know is happening on the ground floor, and it's to help them form a decision or a policy or a plan. I'll tell you, we are into an area we've never been before. So but what I would say to people financially, do not panic. Do not do anything hasty. Do not go to a bloody money lender. Go to your local credit union. There's PMC loans available for everybody. That's personal microcredit, by the way.
Neil,
and engage engage in a personal microcredit loan if you have to, but don't panic and do not go to a money lender.
But this is it again. We're all in the same boat in that regard. Well, obviously, not everyone's in the same boat, but the same. Everyone empathizes with the same situation that people are in. So.
Yeah, and I wouldn't like to see a mortgage moratorium that wasn't matched, say, with rents. If there was a complete freeze on some sort of, or if there was a relief for everybody, but only if it was their income, I think it could only be managed by social welfare, and I wouldn't be a social welfare expert, but they know what they're doing. And I think if there is going to be a relief that way, then let them manage it, But this thing today about landlords now thinking they should get HAP, that's not that from tenants that are getting the COVID payment while they're off work. That's seedy, to be honest with you. But again, I would say to people, do not panic. And if you're stuck for a few bob, go to your local credit union and ask for a personal microcredit loan.
I feel there should be a jingle in there as you say that, Vanessa.
Well, it's social, it's financial inclusion. And
you mentioned the COVID payment, which is do you want to actually talk a little bit about that? I know we've posted it. I know John and the team have posted it on the site a couple of times, and it has been subject to some confusion because it is very unprecedented. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the COVID payment is and who it applies to?
Well, as far as I know, the immediate COVID payment applies to those that were whose work stopped immediately with the shutdowns of the bars and the restaurants, and maybe contract teachers, that type of workforce that just had no choice and suddenly their jobs were gone. Anyone on 0 hours contracts and things like that, that payment, and I don't know the mechanism of it is. I know as a sole trader, a self-employed person, if my work stops and if I can't get court dates for my clients, or if I can't get decisions made, and I can't, I may have to seek relief myself. But I'm not there yet. Having said that, I don't know how long this is going to go on, and it is very much a case of we don't know what's ahead of us. At the moment, we know there's some relief. There's some relief for those that have to sign on the dole, that whose employers had to shut down, where the decision was out of their control. And then there's the situation where there's a ripple effect with people like myself and yourself, Neil, where our work is just cut off because there's no gathering, there's the whole limit to activity that stops us from performing our function on behalf of our clients. But at least it's there, that they've addressed that. There hasn't been a pretending that it's not going to happen. Like you talking about the health services and dealing with that. Like there's an entire spectrum of things that have to come along with this type of event that the COVID-19 has brought on us. I mean, there's a huge loss of income to the exchequer as well. You know, and like say Cheltenham went ahead, but the Irish Exchequer had an interest in that going ahead because it earns money off it, just the same as Mrs. Windsor's family business does. But then like there's a whole load of activity that's not generating income for either the economy or for the Exchequer, whether it's VAT receipts or whether it's like matches not going ahead or the cinema not going ahead, you know, like there's VAT collected there and there's all sorts of activity that there's just been a complete drain on income for everybody. So, I mean, we are dealing in a situation where we actually don't know what's happening next. So how do you budget for that? Well, you just, I suppose, I'd hate to use the expression in a situation as drastic as this, that we make it up as we go along, but we just have to plot it as we go along. And at least we know there's payment out there. At least that's been done and that decision has been made. And they have made it easier. The form is online, people fill it out and they get it in. They haven't made it complicated. That's what I see about it. But there's an entire spectrum of things that are coming on stream that have to be in place to get us through the next 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, if you really think about it, right? If the schools don't go back till September, you know, there's a large portion of the workforce actually can't go back to work anyway because they don't have childcare.
Can I just say, Neil?
Isn't that the beauty about the USB, or the universal income? It takes away all the bureaucracy and all the management, the management of trying to administer like different schemes. If it's just a universal basic income where everyone gets a certain amount, there's a lot of merit in it.
Well, I think what's come on us now is probably it will trigger that conversation now and start that movement.
So you said
create a basic income.
Sorry, Neil, could I just say on the point you made there about the the idea of a rent freeze? Like when I heard that, I could not believe it. Like to me, that's the most ridiculous. We're going to a situation where it looks like 15% of the country are going to lose their jobs. 15% of the workforce are going to lose their jobs.
Well, I think Luke, it's not so much that 15% have lost their jobs.
Yeah,
15% have lost their income.
Yeah, well,
their entire income.
If you look at the tourism section, right? Yeah. So basically, bars, restaurants, hotels, like they're in serious trouble for the next year, right? And I suppose there is a little bit of a sort of silver lining there in that, like, tourism is over this year, probably over next year as well. And all the problems that people have been having with I'd say probably 20% of like the rental stock, for properties in Ireland has been tied up with Airbnb and stuff like that. And that's all gone now. So they're all going to be looking to find a way of making some money off those houses. So they're all going to come back into the rental market. So therefore, you're going to have a big change of supply into that market. So rents are going to be going down. So the idea of the point of rental freezes, I just don't see any sense in it. It's not necessary.
It was a bit self-serving, to be honest with you.
But you're asking the questions there in relation to what's happening next, and we don't know. And then Neil, you said that Leo's speech was received generally well, but in relation to where? Well, because the people that I've been talking to didn't see that either. I think it's more or less split in relation to he should have been able to say what happened in Italy and China and Germany, like the rest of the EU. China were in Italy before the EU were deciding what they were going to do with Italy. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that's why I say we really have to take our lead from China and South Korea in relation to what Leo can do and put everyone. It's like Pulp Fiction. Everybody be cool. I wanted my little Fonzie Taoiseach leader to tell everybody's going to be cool. You're going to have money. That $3 billion that we were saving for Brexit, remember that? Wasn't that leaked out? We have $3 billion here just in case of Brexit. give everyone back their money in relation to AIB. We own that bank. We own Bank of Ireland. It's our money. I know the wording,
No.
the terminology has to be. So we didn't bail them out then, is it not? No, I thought we did.
Well, yeah, we did, but they've paid a lot of money back, and we did sell off 25% of AIB. As far as I
Yeah,
know.
but I don't think at this stage of the game in relation to we bailed them out, and the thing is, more or less, it is our money. And can you just give it back in dribs and drabs? I was just saying to the lads, I don't know if you heard Dave McWilliams' podcast, I think came out Paddy's Day, and it was talking about helicopter money. You know, put everyone that has a bank account, put 1,500 in, so everyone is cool, and then we'll see where we are in 2 or 3 weeks' time. We're going to be paying this back eventually with other billions, so let's just take one headache away. And Leo could have had something in his pocket, because your man, his housing minister came out with something completely different. So the cohesiveness there is a little bit all over the shop at the best of times, and that's why I'm saying Regina Doherty is the minister for social welfare. She wasn't even. She's not even a TD.
Yeah.
According to the last election, I want someone that's there. Like the civil servants need to step up. The public servants.
They are.
I know they are, Vanessa. You're right, but in relation to just giving us the right effective information, because I don't really, in these times you realize exactly what's going on. So I don't want to be too much trapped down the media bubble. I want the sharpness at 9 o'clock, say every evening, 6 o'clock every evening, in relation to, because there's too much talk around it, I think, and not enough action.
Well, I think the first week or so was very much about the formation of the government and who should do it, while this was starting to build. We kind of really only established the emergency response team in the last 2 weeks, whereas it was very much about who's going to be involved, like who's going to be in government. Is Sinn Féin going to be in government? Maybe that, So the first week when this kind of really reached Ireland it was caught up in that. And I remember, and I posted it a few times on the sheet, was that I actually think the team, the emergency, the pandemic planning team that's headed by Dr. Houlihan is that I actually think each of the health spokespersons, as well as the current acting minister for health, should have all been on that anyway, as it should have been like a joint party thing. And I remember saying that at the time, and that's the only weakness I found in the infrastructure that's kind of rolling all this out. It was kind of a week of confusion, because they didn't know whether they should form a government first or whether they should just get on with this first. So there was 7 days of talk about just themselves and their own interests. And at that point, then I remember even saying then it didn't matter really, but who was talking to who, and who was having coalition talks, and who was leading the coalition team, and who was working for who. And if you look at the papers 3 weeks ago, it was all the photographs of the different party teams going in and out of Leinster House, as their coalition teams. And then as this started to develop, and there was 1 meeting and 2 meeting, and everyone then started learning who Tony Houlihan is, right? And I remember even thinking then, and I'm sure I posted it on the sheet, I posted it somewhere anyway, that the health spokesperson in Sinn Féin and in Fianna Fáil and Labour, and even somebody from People Before Profit, they should have all been part of that team with Simon Harris, sitting around that table, because nobody knew who was going to be inheriting health anyway. So they should have all been party to whatever decisions are going on with this pandemic emergency team. I think that's the way it should be now, even now. But they don't.
National government, like Eamon Ryan called.
Well, maybe not national government, but definitely a response from each of the main parties anyway should have somebody on this pandemic emergency team, definitely.
Well, it definitely is not in the next few weeks, but I'd say in the next maybe the month and a half's time, it will be back in centre again in relation to who exactly is running the country.
Yeah,
so that's
we kind of lost a week there. The very first week of this was caught up with talk about coalition, and we were diverted that way, and then suddenly the media was directed towards this. Nobody's mentioned government formation, only a few ministers themselves in the last 2 weeks. Nobody's mentioned homelessness figures. or
Is one
trolley
of the problems-
crisis.
But it's the only
Isn't one
story,
of the
right?
problems? Is one of the problems of the election, the outcome of the election, though, is there's no government that will make people happy. Like, nobody voted for Fine Gael and Sinn Féin to go together. Fine Gael said that they would not go near Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin wanted to get Fine Gael out. Fianna Fáil said they wouldn't go into government with Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin wanted to get rid of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. So if you put a government together now, like if Sinn Féin did go into government with Fianna Fáil, I'm sure they would lose some of their supporters for putting Fianna Fáil in power. Or if they went into government with Fine Gael, I know that a lot of Fine Gael supporters would be very unhappy with that. So the outcome of the election is like, and it was always going to be this way, that it was inconclusive. And I think what needs to happen, and it can't happen now because of the crisis, but there needs to be a new election, and there needs to be two blocks, a centre-right block, a centre-left block, go before the people, and let's see what the outcome is. Because at the moment, there isn't a mandate for any coalition that's been talked about at the moment. Nobody has voted for that. And I know the crisis has happened now, so it's unlikely that a new general election will be called during the crisis. But in terms of trying to start out the politics, I think that's what has to happen. There has to be go before the people with a choice. This is a coalition block. This is the other coalition block, and then let the people decide. Because what we've got has been very inconclusive, and like I can't see a coalition that would have the support of 50% of the people.
Yeah, well, I think the Greens are probably under the most pressure of them all, because it's looking like that Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil will go in with Micheál Martin if they get the Greens. They're not interested in the clatter of independence they might get, but they want the Greens, so the pressure is back on the Greens again. And the Greens, obviously, their policies is against exactly what Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are.
But if
So
the narrative was that was election a change, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael back in government is not a change.
absolutely, it's not. You're right, Derek, and I'm sure people up in Dublin will know this better than me, that like Sinn Féin are actually not capitalising, but they're letting it all happen, and they were going out to have their monster meetings to really
the rallies.
The rallies, and the reality is that Sinn Féin got #1 votes across the board of the election. Dara O'Leary, is it, in Cork, Vanessa? Donegal O'Leary, yeah. Got more votes, I think, or very close to more votes than Micheál Martin and Simon Coveney put together. Is that right, Vanessa?
Granted, yeah.
Yeah, so
but
that's on the streets.
24%.
Well, absolutely,
You know,
absolutely. But you said another election, Derek. If it's another election, they'll have twice as many. So whether they'll get in or not is it was a reactionary general election. But what happens now is that everything has to be in the national interest. And it goes back again. I don't see the purpose of Simon Coveney and Simon Harris. They don't have a mandate. They're not of where people are now, but the public servants and the civil servants that are in those jobs. I want to hear top brass talking, because it's getting really boring looking at Simon Harris and all these boys. All they're doing is reading press releases. They're electioneering again. They're waiting. They don't have to be there. And
they're all electioneering. All the parties are electioneering.
What's to stop Louise? What's the Sinn Féin minister or spokesperson on health? Louise O'Donnell.
Yeah, it's Louise. Yeah,
Louise O'Donnell, is it?
Yeah. No, it's not O'Donnell.
No, it's not. Sorry. Anyway, we know what we're talking about.
We do. Yeah.
He's very good, as is O'Brien with the housing as well. So they have got great ministers potentially in the wings. They don't have a mandate. Neither do Fianna Fáil. But what's to stop her, for example, of going in and saying, "Yeah, I'm standing beside Simon Harris with her mask on and reading press releases"? Should she not have the same entitlement? No. Probably more so.
I think to be fair, I think all of them should have been party to all the decisions being made, because one of them is going to be the next Minister for Health. Whether we're going into another general or not. And I'll be honest with you, I spoke to senior Fianna Fáil people on the Sunday night of the count, and they were all convinced we were heading for another election. And even in early February, I did hear that this coronavirus was going to be far bigger than they were, even in January, actually. And I'm supposed to be going to LA in July, and I was even told then it might be off. So there was an unexpected sort of what this is going to be bigger than we think it is. But there was that risk back in January anyway. And I think all the parties are electioneering. I think that's the reality.
But if and it goes back to the front line again, what you were talking about earlier on, we are the front line, and that's a great kind of energy thing to have. But where are the politicians in all this? As I said, they're electioneering and they're looking for the opportunity. So this comes back to the National Party. And Eamon Ryan, I think it was the most sensible thing I actually heard come out of Leinster House all week. Because they're going to have to get themselves together, because we're looking for leadership. And between the lot of them, they can work it out and say, listen, the country
Johnny,
first here, lads.
I
Put the
agree
egos
with you.
aside. Yeah.
I agree with you, Johnny, 100%. I think it was a good suggestion by Eamon Ryan, because like it is a national emergency. Have a national government while this crisis lasts. You know, like let's do it till the end of the summer, and I'll see where we are then.
But Derek, and it's been put up to them now. And if they can't take the lead, it says a lot about them than it does about us. Like, that we actually don't have anyone with, like, whatever, Michael Collins, De Valera, either or, but they were leaders in relation to what they did for the people that supported them, And
yet from the outside, it looks like there is that our politicians have stood up to the plate in a way that they haven't in the UK and the way they haven't in the US. They do seem to be that little bit more united in trying to deal with this crisis, if only this crisis. Maybe the politicians are more like managers rather than leaders. Like there's no, you mentioned like big icons of Irish history. We don't have any of those figures. What we're trying to have nowadays is more like just managers to just keep things ticking over. I don't know if you can manufacture a leader. Leaders say, "Come at the hour, come at the man."
Leadership leaders appear at any level of an organization.
That's true.
And it could be anyone in A&E, it could be someone down in Croke Park, it could be everywhere. Just because somebody might have a senior post doesn't necessarily mean they were the chosen leader. In public sector, and it's not just the Irish public sector, it's right across the world. Public servants aren't necessarily they generally work their way up to the top through a grading system. I think the leaders will appear at every level in this, and they'll be recognised. Whether it's Johnny's local parish down there, and they're going around, delivering stuff. Leadership. People just think because somebody's elected that they are the leader. It doesn't necessarily mean that they demonstrate leadership qualities, I think. And that's one of the disappointing things about Leo's speech. I actually don't think it really cut through for me. It was like something I'd heard before, and I did post at the time, I think he needs a speechwriter, but it's so much, it's kind of, it was very mimicky. It was like expressions I'd heard before, and I did find it that I don't think it was unique enough. I don't think it was Irish enough, to be honest with you. I think it was what people probably wanted to hear, but I think he could have done it better.
It was showboating as well. It was Paddy's night. He had the world media on him. He knew exactly what he was doing, or his people knew what he was doing.
Oh yeah,
He
it was very
didn't deliver.
contrived.
He
Yeah.
didn't deliver.
It was manufactured. It was manufactured to a sort of Irish Paddy's Day audience.
But as you say, it doesn't represent us. You know, we're ahead of it. As you say, the parish there are really getting behind.
We are the front line.
Yeah, exactly.
Luke, you should have copywrote that, boy.
Hashtag.
I'll write his next speech. Okay, Vanessa.
Do Luke, or just write one for us. Write one for motivation. I think
brothers, sisters.
Yeah.
We could do a song. Go on, do a song there, lads.
My mate Ragaman Bob's got one, Irish Virus. I sent it in, but didn't get on the sheet yet. But Leo also said get your information from credible sources like the national broadcaster. So we're just probably fake news to Leo, like
Well,
So
Claire in her shed.
What would we know? Claire in her shed. Hope she's okay.
Jeez, it was a very nice looking shed.
It was. Could do with like a paint though. But
Vanessa, you never told us who was behind you.
Yeah.
Oh, and anyone recognize her?
Is it EastEnders?
No. Hey, where's me oak? Here, where's me oak? I'm looking. Where's me oak? Oh, here it is. All right. So you don't recognize this lady, no?
Give us a hint.
All right.
She's
Now
gone.
let me get. Huh?
She's gone. Irish, English.
Irish.
Writer.
Now. Any closer? No? Do you recognize any of those two ladies?
It's not shocking.
It
We're in
is.
trouble now.
It is. Oh, you're in big trouble.
This is the problem when you have us on the panel.
Oh, terrible. This is it now, lads. You're terrible. It's funny, if it was fellas, you'd know. Anyone there?
Right,
There's nothing there?
It looks like a crowd. Is it Knock?
Yeah. Can you see?
It's Knock.
I think Vanessa, if John Ryan was here now, he'd just say, Vanessa, it's clear we're dumb and we don't know. You're going to have to tell us.
You can just about make up this.
Yeah.
There's two signs there. One says Shankill and the other one says Andersonstown. Or Undertown. All right, here's the next one.
Is it Nell McCafferty? Nell McCafferty.
I hope there's a prize, Vanessa, because I'm telling you.
Now, any idea here? All right, the lady is Betty Williams and Mairead Corrigan, who got the Nobel Peace Prize in 1976, I think.
Okay.
And Betty died on Patrick's Day.
Ah.
Yeah.
That's our Rosa Parks, really, isn't it?
Rest in peace.
There's a lot of anecdotes about how the whole story started, but she formed a group called it ended up the community of people or peace people, and so that's Betty was organized a march. She collected 6,000 signatures. There's actually a nice story how this started. She was coming home from work, and she saw there was a car chase going on, and it was a paramilitary, and he crashed the car. He was being pursued, and he crashed the car and he killed 3 children. And she was so upset by watching 3 children die as a result of the troubles. She went around, she collected 6,000 signatures. And then at the site of where the children died, about a week or so later, she organized a vigil, and so many thousand people from all women and children turned up. And then within another week, 10,000 turned up. And then the week later, there was 35,000 turned up. So that became the Peace People movement then of the early or mid 1970s in Belfast. And the 2 girls got the Nobel Peace Prize. It all happened within a year, pretty much.
Amazing.
And Betty died on Patrick's Day.
May she rest in peace.
Rest in peace, indeed.
We don't have very many Nobel Peace Prizes.
No, that's brilliant. That's an unsung
very
heroes
few
there
women.
is best. Yeah, absolutely. Well
Yeah.
done. Thanks for educating us on that, Vanessa.
Do my best.
So I think we're coming up to 11:30 p.m., which is what 3:30 in San Jose there, Derek. It's only your days.
4:30.
4:30.
Are you up in the morning?
He's not up for school anyway.
I've had a few beers now anyway, so.
Yeah,
He's
but it's still yesterday there, is it?
Yeah, it's 4:30 in the afternoon.
No, it's tomorrow. It's tomorrow.
Jesus, Grando Das.
Yeah.
Come here. Have we any movies?
I've no entertainment news tonight because I didn't think it would be as pertinent, but I can drop
there's no
some.
cinemas now, so
There is no
What?
cinemas. There is stuff happening in the movie world. As you know, poor old Tom. I was going to set up a GoFundMe for Tom Hanks, but he is out of hospital. Idris Elba is also infected. Of course, Kira Kelly, as we know, also has picked it up.
She's your friend, isn't she? Hello, Kira. Hello. How are you, Kira?
How are you, Kira? But
Liam,
what is interesting
Liam.
is that because so many people now are working from home, it's putting huge strain, obviously, on the internet. And anyone who watches Netflix and or plays video games might have noticed that the last few days. But Netflix are being asked to ask their customer base to stream less quality videos so as not to put a strain on the rest of the
I think they've
internet.
actually put a throttle on it, so they've actually reduced the quality, so you can't actually get it to take it down by 25%.
I can't say I've noticed, but can I just say there was one movie I was going to have a chat with you about. Was I got it. Well, I found it and I watched it. I didn't think I'd like it, and I actually did like it. It's Ford versus Ferrari, or it's Monte Carlo 1966. There's another title for it, but I don't know if you know the movie. Matt Damon is in it. Yeah.
And Christian Bale.
Yeah. So it's I didn't think I'd like it. I don't know how but it's also called Ford versus Ferrari.
Like it.
Huh?
If Matt Damon is in it, my wife will like it.
I think Derek, in the US it's called Ford.
I don't need an excuse, was it?
I think in the US, Derek, it's called Ford versus Ferrari because the US market wouldn't understand Le Mans 66 and probably ask where the other 65 films are.
I don't know where I got it. So,
Neil, could I?
You just mentioned earlier. Johnny mentioned earlier about Parasite, which is a great film. But on St. Patrick's Day, we watched The Commitments here.
Oh yeah.
The Corson.
It was absolutely amazing. I haven't seen it in years.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for something to watch, just to put a smile on your face, have a look at The Commitments.
Yeah. It was on Virgin there recently, actually.
And if you want another Korean film recommendation, check out Mother, which is I think one of the best films ever saw.
Yeah, do you know what? I'd love to do all that, but there's just too much reading in those movies for me. I just want to sit back and go.
Yeah. We had our Bill Hicks tribute night there, which was a huge success. We raised $2,000 for 3 charities. And the following day, myself and Garland were fairly shook Norris, so said we'll go to the cinema, Virgin Dublin International Film Festival. So there was one actually made with Keela had the soundtrack, a famine film. I know we had difference of opinion about Black 47 down back in the day, but this was a real quality film that was launched, premiered on the Friday night of the festival. It was sold out, so I didn't get to it. Myself and Garland walked in, hung over to Parasite and the IFI, and I said, I'm really not in the mood for a film and a one with a subtitle. But I really got through it because the film was that good. Do you know what I mean? So it's on the film. So Mother, if you says Mother is a good film coming from South Korea, it really is beautiful. And I know Tarantino, loaned a lot of stuff from there. So it's just rich in culture. I don't know what kind of deal the Simpsons are getting. They get their animation done over there. So it's really an exciting place. And an Oscar means so much. Same way as a piece of cord means so much in this day and age, because our art and our culture is something that we can really tap into now in these times. So Neil, if you don't mind, I just got a shameless little plug here, but it's not really a shameless plug. It's just something that I want people to tune into, because since Larry Gogan passed on there, and Marion Finucane and a few more.
60 seconds.
Absolutely. But I remember the time when you'd be playing, you'd have your blank tape in the cassette and you'd be waiting for Larry to come on with the golden hour, and you might get Nick Kershaw, Wouldn't It Be Good? Or Simple Minds, Belfast Child, or Pearl Jam, Alive, all these songs. So I've been making mixtapes for decades now, lads, at this stage. I think I made my first mixtape when I was 9. But I put an antivirus vaccine music playlist on Spotify. not that I'm down with the corporates or anything, you know, but everyone's on Spotify more or less, you know, I'm not going to plug Spotify as such, but it's a really good way to get a playlist going. So what I've done, I think I've got about 150 songs. And I don't know if you've noticed yourselves that most songs that you listen to now, they almost are about what you were going through, even though that's not what it's about, but you give it context. And I've got a few jokes from Bill Hicks sprinkled in. There's some great stuff from Joan Rivers and Seth from Reginald D. Hunter. But the music is from many decades, many genres. And I'd ask people if they want to get a little bit of a comfort, mindfulness, you know, music was always part of the mindfulness forever. So we don't really need to look too far from it, but just put the earphones on, I say, and antivirus vaccine music is the name of the playlist. And it's something for everyone. Just press shuffle and get the walk on. And myself and Jinx are better for it, but also just the fresh air. I just see if he is, Vanessa. Do you want to see Jinx?
I want to see him.
Jinx.
I mean, Baba.
Jinx. He's around. What about your fella, Neil? That's what I want to do. I want people listening to music, lads, in this time, because music is, or anything audio, you're moving and you're also engaging. And I think any recommendations that we can have on the sheet, and Olga and John missed their presence, doing great work. Like, you know, it really is the center of what's going on as well in relation to, always has been, a little kind of community there. So that's good that it's being kept alive, I think. Would that be fair to say?
I think on that positive note, thanks, Johnny. We'll call it a night there.
Do you want to have a look at the papers, guys?
We're missing Olga, so and it's very much coronavirus.
Okay, well, apparently there's a dial a prayer. So, Johnny, would you like to jot this down? Dial a prayer 085 7611 822. So if you dial a prayer, we'll all be saved.
That's from the front page of the Examiner.
The Examiner.
So to wrap up, I don't know, was Luke, were you trying to get in a last word there?
No. Just
we're not
happy to see everyone.
Yeah. No, Luke. What have you a date?
A date for the wedding?
Yeah.
Not now. No, not. We're thinking October, but everything's up the air. Well,
right, just give me enough notice to get to the Weight Watchers.
Yeah.
Well, I just
want to thank. How long is the flight to Korea?
Pick out the right hat. It's
that too. To get to fit into the hat.
It depends how you go. It's about 13 hours, something like that.
Oh, here.
You don't have to get married in Korea. You can get married in Offaly.
Can you?
You can get married anywhere. Think about Offaly. Not many people are going to be going there.
That's true. So,
you could have that.
Well, I just hope I can fly at that stage. That's all I'm looking forward to.
Hopefully so.
I had a trip planned in July, and I was flying into Seattle, and I was getting the Coast Starlight train all the way down the West Coast. Do you know, Derek? By going from Seattle down to LA. So
I got that train as well.
I booked on it anyway. I booked a sleeper on it, so bloody better be on it.
Well, time is going to tell. I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Our man in Kilkenny, Johnny Keenan, our man in San Jose in Silicon Valley, Derek O'Donoghue, and welcome to the show, Derek. Hopefully we'll get you back. Our man in Porto, Luke Brennan, and our lady kicking it up in Crumlin, Vanessa Foran. Want to thank John Ryan, who unfortunately didn't join us tonight because we're using some new software and it has, as you know, given us some problems, so we apologize for that. But feck it, we're giving out to before for apologizing too much. So there you have it.
The doggy has arrived in.
Oh, there we go. We got a dog.
She's looking up.
We'll be chatting about the possibility of doing future shows. We'd love to hear what you'd like.
Well, we're going to do virtual Eurovision.
Vanessa's been bullying us for this for some time now. So.
Eurovision has been cancelled.
Yeah,
that's why she's doing it.
Should have been cancelled last year, lads. Should have been cancelled last year.
But if the virtual Paddy's Day was better than the real Paddy's Day, I spent all day skitting laughing on the phone. We're going to virtual. You could be the Portuguese entry, so no coups or military takeovers, Luke.
Father.
Yeah, and Derek can be the American entry, and Johnny, I'll think now, Johnny. Where would you like to come from? I'm thinking I'm going to be
A nice
Tina.
house with Charlie McGettigan.
Well, I want
That's
to
where
be
I'd like to come
Tina.
from.
I want to be Tina. Cross your heart. She was beaten. She was beaten by ABBA. She was robbed. And Neil is going to be Cathal Dunn, happy man.
That'll be me. That'll be me. And the delirium has set in, folks. That's what a few days in isolation has done for it. Housebound. So thanks again to our panel. Thanks again to all the viewers. And as John Ryan would say, the trolls for dialing in, listening. We'll be hopefully back soon. Have a good night, or if you're watching this tomorrow, have a lovely day. And we will talk to you soon. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Night, night.
Up the rebels.
Bye bye.